In life, we often find ourselves standing before closed doors, frustrated by their resistance to open. We knock, we push, we even try to break through them, but nothing changes. We wonder if the path we've chosen is the right one, or if God is even listening. But what if those closed doors are not obstacles, but divine barriers designed to protect you? What if every delay, every no, and every unanswered prayer is part of a grander plan orchestrated by a God who sees what you cannot? Stay with me and let's uncover how God aligns His timing with His purpose, leading you to doors that no man can shut. Have you ever stood in a moment of life where everything felt uncertain? You prayed, you believed, and yet nothing seemed to move. The world tells us to hustle, to make things happen on our own, but the kingdom of God operates differently. Faith in God is not about forcing opportunities, but about trusting His timing. His ways are higher than ours, and His thoughts far surpass anything we can imagine. When God closes a door, it is not a punishment, it is preparation. Imagine Joseph, sold by his brothers and thrown into a pit. To the natural eye, every door seemed to shut in his face. He was stripped of his coat, his freedom, and his family. But Joseph's life was not spiraling out of control. It was falling into divine alignment. God had a door prepared for him, a door that would not only lead to his restoration, but also position him to save nations. Yet, Joseph had to endure the wait. The waiting period is not wasted time, it is God's workshop, where He refines your character and builds your faith. During the wait, God strips away the layers of doubt, fear, and self-reliance that would otherwise hinder you from stepping into His promise. In the Bible, David was anointed as king long before he ever sat on the throne. Why? Because God was preparing him in the fields, through battles, and even through the betrayal of those closest to him. Preparation is a sign of divine love, not delay. We live in a world of instant gratification where waiting feels like punishment, but God's timing is never rushed or delayed. Ecclesiastes 3:01 reminds us, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." God is not bound by human schedules or deadlines. He sees the end from the beginning and orchestrates every detail to fulfill His purpose in your life. Consider the story of Hannah, who longed for a child. She prayed year after year, pouring out her heart before God. Her waiting was not a denial, it was a divine delay. When God finally opened her womb, she gave birth to Samuel, a prophet who would anoint kings and lead a nation back to God. Sometimes God delays the fulfillment of a promise because what He is birthing in you is far greater than you could ever imagine. The enemy often whispers lies in the waiting. He tells you that God has forgotten you, that your prayers are in vain, and that others are moving ahead while you are stuck. But the truth is, God is working behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. Isaiah 22:22 declares, "I will place on His shoulder the key to the house of David. What He opens, no one can shut." And this is the assurance we have, no matter how long the wait. When God opens a door, it will swing wide with divine purpose and favor. Trusting God's timing requires surrender. It means laying down your plans, your timelines, and your expectations at His feet. It is not passive. It is an active faith that says, "Lord, I may not understand, but I trust." When Jesus stood before the tomb of Lazarus, the situation seemed hopeless. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and all human logic declared it was too late. But Jesus didn't operate on human logic, He operated on divine authority. With a single command, He called Lazarus forth, proving that God's timing is always perfect, even when it seems delayed. When you are in alignment with God, you don't have to force doors to open. Psalm 37:23 says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord." If He orders your steps, He also orders your stops. Closed doors are often God's way of redirecting you to something far greater. In Acts 16, Paul and Silas intended to preach the gospel in Asia, but the Holy Spirit forbade them. It seemed like a setback, but God was directing them to Macedonia, where their ministry would flourish. Sometimes God closes doors to protect you from settling for less than His best. The process of waiting is not about passivity, it is about preparation. Use this time to grow in faith, to develop your gifts, and to draw closer to God. Like a seed planted in the ground, much of God's work is hidden beneath the surface. You may not see it, but roots are growing deep, ensuring that when the door finally opens, you will be ready to walk through it. God's timing requires obedience. In Joshua 6, the Israelites faced the fortified city of Jericho. God instructed them to march around the city for 7 days, and on the 7th day the walls would fall. It must have seemed foolish to march without seeing immediate results, but their obedience unlocked the miracle. Sometimes God will ask you to move in faith, even when the door has not yet opened. Obedience is the key that unlocks the doors of His promises. Faith in God's timing also requires patience. Hebrews 10:36 says, "For you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise." Waiting is not easy, but it strengthens your spirit and deepens your dependence on God. The enemy will try to tempt you with shortcuts, but shortcuts often lead to detours. Abraham and Sarah learned this the hard way when they tried to fulfill God's promise through Hagar, resulting in conflict that lasted generations. Trusting God's timing means refusing to settle for anything less than His best. When the right door opens, it will be undeniable. It will not come through manipulation or human striving, but through God's favor. Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and He adds no sorrow with it." God's blessings come without regret, and His timing brings peace. You won't have to fight for what God has already prepared for you. The beauty of God's timing is that it is always tied to His purpose. Every open door is an opportunity to glorify Him and fulfill your divine assignment. When Esther was brought into the palace, it was not for her comfort or status, but to save her people. Mordecai reminded her, "Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Your open doors are not just for your benefit. They are for the advancement of God's kingdom. The question is not whether God will open the right door, but whether you are ready to walk through it. Will you trust Him in the waiting? Will you remain faithful when the door is still closed? Will you surrender your timeline for His? The waiting is not a punishment. It is a preparation for something far greater than you can imagine. The God who parted the Red Sea, who brought down the walls of Jericho, and who raised Lazarus from the dead is the same God who is ordering your steps. Trust Him. Wait for Him. And when the time comes, step boldly through the door He opens, knowing that His timing is always perfect. God's plans are intricately woven into the fabric of your life, even when you cannot perceive them. Each moment of waiting, each unanswered prayer, and every seeming setback is a thread in a masterpiece that will only be revealed in its fullness when you step into His promise. The challenge for us is not merely to wait, but to wait with faith. Faith is the currency of the kingdom. It is the evidence of things not seen and the substance of things hoped for. Faith does not demand immediate results, but rests in the assurance that God is working, even when there is no visible sign of progress. Look at the example of Noah. God instructed him to build an ark in preparation for a flood when there was no rain, no clouds, and no evidence of the impending disaster. For decades, Noah worked in obedience, enduring ridicule and doubt from those around him. Yet his trust in God's timing and instructions preserved not only his family, but also the future of humanity. Noah's story is a reminder that faith requires action, even when the promise seems far off. It is not enough to believe. You must also prepare. What God has spoken over your life will come to pass, but are you making room for it? Are you building the ark in obedience, even when the skies are clear? God's timing often comes with tests, not to destroy you, but to strengthen you. Abraham was promised a son, and even after the long wait, he was asked to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Imagine the inner turmoil he must have felt. Yet Abraham's trust in God's character was greater than his need for answers. He believed that even if Isaac were taken, God would provide. This unwavering faith opened the door to a blessing that would impact generations. Sometimes God's timing feels like a test of whether you trust the giver more than the gift. Will you hold tightly to the promise, or will you release it back into His hands, knowing that His plans are far greater? In your journey, you may find yourself comparing your progress to others. The world's standards will tempt you to measure success by speed, achievements, and visibility. But God is not bound by earthly timelines or definitions of success. He is not moved by how quickly others seem to be advancing. His focus is on your growth, your character, and your readiness for the doors He has prepared for you. Comparison is a thief of joy and a distraction from purpose. When Peter questioned Jesus about John's future, Jesus replied, "If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." This is the call for each of us, to keep our eyes on Christ and not be distracted by the pace or path of others. God's timing is often intertwined with His protection. What you perceive as a delay might be His way of shielding you from harm. Imagine if Joseph had been freed from prison too soon. He might have returned to his family, unaware that God had a greater position waiting for him in Pharaoh's court. The timing of his release was not random. It was divinely aligned with Pharaoh's dreams and the need for a wise interpreter. Similarly, there are times when God delays certain opportunities because the environment is not yet ready, or you are not yet prepared to handle the weight of His blessings. Trust that every "not yet" is a part of His divine strategy. Prayer is a powerful tool in aligning yourself with God's timing. It is not about persuading God to act according to your timeline, but about bringing your heart into alignment with His will. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." This surrender allowed Him to fulfill His purpose even when the path was difficult. When you pray, seek not just answers, but also the strength to trust and obey. Prayer refines your desires, strengthens your spirit, and prepares you to recognize the doors God opens. The enemy often tries to sow seeds of doubt during the waiting season. He whispers lies that God has forgotten you or that your prayers are ineffective. But Scripture reminds us that God's word will not return void. What He has spoken, He will accomplish. Isaiah 55:10. Isaiah 55:10-11 compares His word to rain and snow that water the earth, making it bud and flourish. Your waiting is not in vain. Each prayer, each act of faith, and each moment of trust is watering the seeds of promise that God has planted in your life. One of the most profound aspects of God's timing is its connection to His grace. When the door finally opens, His grace equips you to walk through it. You will not have to rely on your strength, intellect, or resources because His power is made perfect in weakness. Paul, in his letters, often spoke of the sufficiency of God's grace. It was grace that sustained him through hardships, empowered him to preach the gospel, and carried him through seasons of waiting. When God opens a door, His grace will go before you, making the crooked places straight and the rough paths smooth. Sometimes God's timing will disrupt your plans. You may have a vision for your life mapped out with precision, but God's plans often require you to let go of your own agenda. Mary and Joseph had their lives turned upside down by the announcement of Jesus' birth. Yet their willingness to submit to God's timing brought salvation to the world. When God interrupts your plans, it is because He is introducing a purpose far greater than anything you could imagine. Faithfulness in the small things is crucial while you wait for God's timing. The Bible says, "Whoever is faithful in little will also be faithful in much." David was tending sheep when God called him to be king. He wasn't seeking recognition or trying to position himself for greatness. He was simply being faithful where he was. God often uses the ordinary moments of life to prepare you for extraordinary assignments. Don't despise the small beginnings or overlook the lessons in the mundane. Every moment is a stepping stone toward the fulfillment of His promise. God's timing often comes with peace. When He opens a door, it will not be accompanied by confusion or chaos. Philippians 4:7 speaks of the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. This peace guards your heart and mind, reassuring you that you are exactly where you need to be. When faced with decisions, seek His peace as confirmation. It is one of the clearest indicators that you are walking in alignment with His will. The waiting season is also a time of revelation. God uses this period to reveal more of Himself to you. In the wilderness, the Israelites experienced God as a provider, a guide, and a protector. Each day brought fresh manna from heaven, a reminder of His faithfulness. Similarly, in your waiting season, God will reveal Himself in ways you may not have experienced before. He will show you His sufficiency, His power, and His love. These revelations are not just for the season you are in, but are treasures you will carry into the doors He opens. As you wait, surround yourself with godly counsel and community. The voices you listen to can either strengthen your faith or feed your doubts. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Seek out those who will encourage you to trust God's timing and remind you of His promises. Avoid those who sow seeds of fear or impatience. Your environment matters in your journey of faith. God's timing is often confirmed through His Word. The Bible is filled with promises that speak to His faithfulness and His perfect plans. Meditate on these promises and let them anchor your soul. When doubt creeps in, return to His Word and declare it over your life. His Word is alive and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. It has the power to cut through confusion and bring clarity to your situation. Sometimes God will open doors that require you to leave your comfort zone. Abraham was called to leave his home and go to a land God would show him. He didn't have all the details, but he had the promise. Walking through the doors God opens often requires a step of faith into the unknown. It is in these moments that you discover the depth of His provision and the strength of His guidance. The beauty of God's timing is that it is never just about you. The doors He opens in your life are often connected to the lives of others. Your obedience, your faith, and your trust become a testimony that encourages and impacts those around you. Esther's decision to approach the king saved an entire nation. Your story too has the power to inspire and uplift others, pointing them to the faithfulness of God. The process of waiting refines your perspective. It shifts your focus from what you lack to who God is. It teaches you to value His presence over His promises, His character over His gifts. When the door finally opens, you will walk through it not only with gratitude, but also with a deeper understanding of His heart. You will see that the waiting was not about the destination, but about the journey of becoming more like Him. Every season of waiting is part of a larger divine strategy that unfolds in God's perfect time. There are moments in life when it feels like we're standing at a threshold, waiting for the door to swing open. We wonder if God has forgotten about us, if His promises will ever come to fruition, or if we're stuck in a holding pattern. But it is in these moments that God is most active, quietly working in the background, preparing not only the right circumstances, but also our hearts. God knows the desires of your heart, the burdens you carry, and the dreams that seem distant. But even more importantly, He knows what you are capable of in His strength, what you are being prepared to carry, and how His timing is intricately woven into the fabric of your life. As you stand at the door of anticipation, remember that God is not just waiting for the right moment to release His blessings. He is waiting for the right moment to ensure that you are ready to handle the weight of those blessings. There are doors in your life that will only open when you reach a level of maturity, when your faith has been tested and proven, and when your character aligns with the vision that God has for you. It is during the waiting period that God is building your inner strength, refining your character, and deepening your reliance on Him. Sometimes we wish that the waiting would end quickly, but it is in this process that we are shaped and molded for the purpose that God has placed within us. Consider the story of Joseph. He was given a dream of greatness, of his brothers and even his parents bowing down before him. Yet his journey to fulfillment was long and filled with hardship. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned, Joseph must have wondered where God was in the midst of it all. But God was with him through every season, and each step, no matter how difficult, was a part of the preparation for the promotion that would eventually come. God knew when the right time was for Joseph to rise to power in Egypt and to save many lives during a time of famine. What might have seemed like a series of unfortunate events was in fact God orchestrating a perfect plan. The door to Joseph's destiny opened when he was fully prepared to walk through it, and when the timing was aligned with God's greater purpose. This is the same for you. There may be moments in your life when you face betrayal, injustice, or circumstances that seem to contradict the promises God has spoken over your life. In those times, remember that God is not absent. He is working in the unseen, preparing both you and the situation for His intervention. It may feel like a season of silence, but that is when God is often doing His deepest work. Like a gardener who prunes a tree to ensure it bears much fruit, God prunes and refines your life during the waiting season so that when the door opens, you are strong, fruitful, and equipped to handle what lies beyond. Furthermore, during times of waiting, we must also learn to rest in God's sovereignty. It can be easy to become anxious or frustrated when the doors we expect to open don't seem to budge. We may feel as though our efforts are in vain, or worse, that our waiting is being ignored. But God's sovereignty means that He has complete control over the timing and unfolding of our lives. He knows the beginning from the end, and His plans for us are far greater than anything we could imagine. Our trust in God's sovereignty leads us to the peace that comes when we relinquish control over the timing and trust Him with the process. The timing of God isn't based on our understanding or our sense of urgency. In fact, God's sense of timing often works in ways that challenge our human perspective. We want instant results. We want things to happen on our schedule. But God works differently. His timing is perfect, and He will not open doors too soon or too late. He knows exactly when to release you into the next season, when to reveal the next step, and when to open the door that will change your life. Sometimes the waiting period is necessary for you to grow, develop, and strengthen your relationship with Him. The more you learn to lean on His understanding rather than your own, the more you will experience peace and assurance in the waiting. This understanding leads us to a critical point: learning to trust the process. The door might not open immediately, but that does not mean God is not working. Trusting the process means believing that God is at work even when we cannot see the results yet. Trusting the process is knowing that what we are going through today is shaping us for what lies ahead. Trusting the process is acknowledging that the journey is just as important as the destination, and that God is faithful to complete the work He has started in us. Look at the life of David, for example. Anointed to be king at a young age, David spent many years fleeing from King Saul, living as a fugitive and facing many trials. He was promised a throne, but he didn't immediately walk into it. Instead, he went through years of hardship, testing, and waiting. But during that time, God was preparing him to lead, to shepherd His people with wisdom, and to be a king who would honor God. David learned the lessons of humility, patience, and trust in God's timing. And when the moment came for him to be crowned, he was ready to step into his calling with grace and strength. It is important to remember that the doors God opens are not always ones that we expect. Sometimes we have a particular vision in mind for what success or fulfillment will look like. We envision a certain career, a specific relationship, or a set of circumstances that we believe will bring us happiness. But God's doors are often bigger and better than we could ever have imagined. He sees the bigger picture and knows exactly what is best for us. The door He opens for you might look different from what you had envisioned, but it will always be aligned with His perfect plan for your life. Trusting God's timing means surrendering our own ideas of what the future should look like and being open to the doors He wants to open. It means laying down our own ambitions and desires and trusting that God's way is the best way. The path He sets before you may not always be easy, but it will always be filled with purpose. When you trust Him, you are allowing Him to lead you to places that you never thought possible. God, the door He opens for you may lead to new opportunities, new relationships, and new experiences that will stretch you in ways you never imagined. Another aspect of trusting God's timing is knowing that God's delays are not denials. There are times in life when it feels like God is silent or that your prayers are unanswered. But just because the door hasn't opened yet does not mean that God has forgotten you. He is working in the background, aligning people, resources, and circumstances to ensure that the door will open at the right moment. Trusting in God's timing means holding on to the belief that His promises are yes and amen, and that He is faithful to fulfill them in His perfect time. In the meantime, we are called to be faithful where we are. Just because we are waiting for a door to open doesn't mean that we should sit idly by. God has given each of us a purpose, and we are to continue working, serving, and living out that purpose in every season. We are to remain faithful to the small things, the hidden things, and the things that seem insignificant, because it is in these moments of faithfulness that God prepares us for the larger opportunities He will bring. Every door you walk through, whether big or small, is a part of the process that leads to the fulfillment of God's purpose for your life. Moreover, during times of waiting, God often calls us to embrace His peace and rest. There is a grace that comes with waiting when we choose to rest in Him. This doesn't mean being passive or lazy, but rather it means trusting in His provision and acknowledging that He is in control. When we rest in God, we acknowledge that we do not have to force open the doors ourselves. We do not have to worry, fret, or stress about the outcome. We simply have to trust that God knows what He is doing and that He will open the right doors at the right time. As you wait for the doors God has prepared for you to open, keep your eyes on Him. Trust that He is faithful to bring His plans to pass, even when you cannot see the full picture. Remember, God's timing is always perfect, and He will open the right doors at the right time. He is faithful to fulfill His promises, and you can trust that what He has started in you, He will complete. As you wait, it is essential to understand that God's delays are never a denial of His goodness or His promises. Sometimes we become disheartened when it seems like the doors we've been praying for aren't opening. It can feel like we've been waiting forever, and the frustration begins to build. But we must remind ourselves that in these moments, God is still at work. He is never idle. He is preparing you for what lies ahead, and He is making sure that when the door finally opens, you are ready to step through with confidence and grace. The journey of waiting also requires trust. It's not simply waiting in the sense of biding time, but waiting with purpose and expectation. Trusting in God's timing means knowing that every step you take is leading you closer to the fulfillment of His purpose for your life. The waiting period is not a wasted season. It's a time of preparation, refinement, and deepening of your faith. You may not see the work that God is doing in you, but He is always shaping you, stretching you, and growing you in ways that you cannot see from your limited perspective. This is why it is crucial to remain focused on God's promises and not on your present circumstances. The temptation to become discouraged when things aren't moving at the pace we expect is strong, but we must fight against it. We must choose to remember that God is faithful and His word does not return void. He has spoken over your life, and those words will not fall to the ground. If God has said that He will open doors for you, trust that those doors will open. His timing is never off. It is perfect. It is always intentional. It is always right. There will be seasons when it feels like you are standing still, watching others around you step into their dreams, their goals, and their destinies. It may seem like everyone else is advancing while you remain stuck, but in these seasons, God is teaching you something valuable. He is teaching you to trust in His process, to develop patience, and to cultivate a deeper relationship with Him. Remember, the moment of fulfillment isn't just about the open door. It's about who you become in the process. It's about the character God is building in you that will sustain you once that door is opened. If you are not prepared, if your heart is not aligned with His will, the blessings He has for you could be a burden rather than a blessing. God's delay is always meant for your good. It is also important to recognize that while you are waiting for one door to open, God may already be preparing other doors along the way. Often we have a narrow view of what God wants for us, and we fixate on one specific door. We believe that this particular opportunity or relationship is the one we are meant to step into. But God, in His wisdom, knows the best path for us. He sees the many doors that are available, and He will open the ones that align with His perfect plan. The door you thought was the one might not be the door God has for you. And when He opens the right door, you will understand why the others didn't work out. You will realize that His plan for you is far greater than the one you had imagined. In the waiting, God teaches us surrender. We are asked to surrender our own plans, our own timelines, and our own desires to His perfect will. This act of surrender is not passive resignation. It is an active choice to trust in the goodness of God, to release control over our lives and allow Him to lead us. When we surrender, we acknowledge that we are not in charge and that we are okay with that. God's way is better. His timing is flawless, and His purposes are far beyond anything we could ever achieve on our own. By surrendering to His will, we are positioning ourselves to receive what He has planned for us, knowing that it is always for our good and His glory. One of the most important things to remember in the waiting period is that God's timing is not like our own. We live in a world that values instant gratification. We are accustomed to getting what we want when we want it, but God doesn't work on our timeline. His ways are higher, and His understanding is beyond ours. He sees the end from the beginning, and He knows exactly when it is time for us to walk through the doors He has prepared. Trusting in His timing means acknowledging that we cannot rush His plans. We can't manipulate or force the situation. We must rest in the truth that He knows what's best for us and that His timing is always right. As you walk through life, there will be times when you question why certain doors haven't opened yet. There will be moments of doubt and frustration. But in those moments, remember that God's delay does not mean denial. When God closes a door, it is not a rejection of you, but a redirection towards something better. When God is silent, it does not mean He is absent. He is working in ways you cannot yet see, aligning the right opportunities, the right people, and the right circumstances to ensure that when the door opens, it will be exactly the right one. God's doors are always doors of destiny. They are not random opportunities. They are not just chances that happen by chance. Every door that God opens for you is part of the divine purpose He has for your life. When God opens a door, it is a doorway to your destiny, a doorway to the fulfillment of your calling, and a doorway to greater blessings. The door you are waiting for is not just a door. It is the gateway to the next phase of your life, the next level of growth, and the next chapter of God's plan for you. When that door opens, it will lead you into the fullness of God's purpose for you, and you will look back and understand why it took the time it took. But before that door opens, God is preparing you. He is teaching you to trust in His provision, to walk in faith, and to stand firm on His promises. He is cultivating patience in your heart and reminding you that the waiting is never wasted. Even when you cannot see the results, God is at work. Even when you don't understand the process, He is doing something significant in you. The work He is doing is not just about the door that will open. It is about who you are becoming in the process. The person who will step through that door is not the same person who is waiting for it to open. God is shaping you, molding you, and preparing you for the moment when He will unlock the door and release you into the fullness of His purpose. So, while you wait, continue to walk in faith. Continue to trust God with your future. Continue to pray, to seek Him, and to believe that He is faithful to open the right doors at the right time. When the door opens, it will be a testament to God's faithfulness, and you will see the beauty of His timing. The delay, the waiting, the frustration, it will all make sense when the door swings wide open and you step into the destiny that God has been preparing you for all along. And my dear, keep believing, keep trusting, keep hoping. Because when the time is right, God will open the door and you will step into the life He has designed for you. And it will be more than you could have ever imagined. Sometimes it can feel like the weight of waiting is too much to bear. You may look around and see others moving forward, achieving what they've dreamed about while you feel stuck in place. You may even question if the door will ever open for you or if you've missed your chance. But in these moments, I want to remind you that God's timing is not limited by your perception of it. Just because it seems like you're stuck doesn't mean that God isn't working behind the scenes. In fact, He might be doing the most important work in your life in the moments when you feel the most still. God's timing isn't about waiting in idle. It's about becoming the person He's called you to be in preparation for the moment when He opens the door. The doors that God opens are not just doors to success, fame, or wealth. They are doors to the calling that He has placed in your heart. Doors that lead you to fulfill the very purpose you were created for. These doors are life-changing, not because of the opportunities they present, but because of the transformation that happens within you when you step through them. We tend to focus on the outward circumstances, the open doors, the promotions, the relationships. But what truly matters is the inner transformation. God is more concerned with who you are becoming than with where you are going. While we are often eager to reach the destination, God is focused on the journey and how we are prepared to carry the weight of the blessings He has for us. If we rush ahead of His timing, we risk missing the lessons He wants to teach us, and we may not be able to handle the blessings He wants to give us. When God closes a door, it's because He has something better in mind. But in that waiting period, when we don't understand why the door hasn't opened yet, it's easy to doubt. But it's during this time that we must learn to trust God with all our hearts. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This is not just a nice verse to memorize. This is a call to live by faith in the waiting. It's a call to trust that even when we don't understand, God is still at work. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, God is aligning things in your favor. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had a dream that one day he would be a leader, that his brothers would bow down to him. But instead of immediately being elevated to his position of power, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. Joseph's journey didn't make sense. It didn't seem like his dream was ever going to come true. Yet, through all the challenges, God was shaping Joseph's character, preparing him for the position he would one day hold. If Joseph had not gone through the trials, if he had not faced the delays, he would not have been ready to manage the great responsibility that God had in store for him. And when the time was right, the door opened and Joseph found himself in a position of authority, able to fulfill the dream God had given him. Joseph's story teaches us that even when things seem to be going in the opposite direction of where we want to go, God is still working behind the scenes. The delays, the setbacks, the closed doors, they are all part of God's perfect plan. What we see as obstacles are often God's stepping stones to our destiny. When we trust Him in the waiting, when we continue to obey Him even when the door hasn't opened yet, we are preparing ourselves for the moment when the door swings wide open. We must also understand that sometimes the doors that God opens aren't the ones we expect. We may have our own vision of how things should unfold, but God's vision is always better. He sees the bigger picture. He knows the plans He has for us, and those plans are good. Jeremiah 29:11 tells us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." God's plans are far greater than our own, and while we may not always understand the process, we can rest assured that He is working all things together for our good. There are times when we want to take matters into our own hands, when we feel like we've waited long enough and it's time to make something happen. But if we act prematurely, we risk stepping through the wrong door. We may open a door that leads to more confusion, more frustration, and more setbacks. There is a great danger in trying to force open doors that God has not yet opened. Sometimes we need to learn the discipline of waiting, of trusting, and of letting God do the work that only He can do. Our job is not to make things happen. Our job is to remain faithful, to continue in obedience, and to trust that in His perfect timing, He will open the right door at the right time. The right door might not come in the package you expect. It may not look like what you thought it would look like, and it may come at a time that you never anticipated. But when that door opens, you will know that it is the right door, because God's peace will settle in your heart. You will sense His presence leading you through it, and you will know that this is the moment He has prepared for you. The truth is, the right door doesn't just lead to new opportunities, it leads to new relationships, new lessons, and new levels of growth. Every door that God opens for us is a doorway to the next chapter of our story. And sometimes, before we can walk through a new door, we need to let go of the old one. Holding on to old things, old mindsets, old relationships, or old patterns of behavior can keep us from walking into the new thing that God has for us. There are times when we need to release what was in order to embrace what is. God cannot fill us with new things if we are still holding on to the old. When we finally step through the right door, it's not just about what we gain, it's about what God does in us and through us. The right door leads to transformation, it leads to growth. It leads to a deeper understanding of who God is and who we are in Him. It leads us to a place where we can fulfill our purpose and impact the world in ways we never thought possible. The right door will always lead us closer to the heart of God. It will always bring us into alignment with His perfect will. And while we may not always understand the journey, we can trust that every step we take is ordered by the Lord. He is guiding us, He is protecting us, and He is opening the doors that will lead us to the fullness of our calling. As you wait for the right doors to open, remember that the process is just as important as the promise. God is working in you, molding you and preparing you for what He has prepared for you. Trust that when the time is right, when the season is complete, He will open the right door and you will step into a new level of blessing, purpose, and fulfillment. Until that moment comes, continue to trust, continue to believe, and continue to stand firm in the faith that God will open the doors that are meant for you at the perfect time. And as you wait, keep your eyes on God. Don't get distracted by what others are doing. Don't measure your progress against theirs. Your journey is unique, and God has a path that only you can walk. Trust that when the time comes, He will open the doors that are meant for you, and you will walk through them into the future He has prepared for you. Keep believing. Keep trusting. The right doors are coming, and when they do, they will lead you into a destiny that is greater than anything you could have ever imagined. When we talk about doors opening in God's timing, it's important to remember that we are not just waiting for a specific event or opportunity. The waiting process is transformative. It is during the waiting periods that God molds us, builds our character, and strengthens our faith. We often look at our lives and focus on what is not happening, what doors have not yet opened, what dreams seem far away, and what opportunities we feel are slipping through our fingers. We see ourselves as incapacitated from true health. We feel evaporated by the presence of escape, but God sees the bigger picture. He sees the person you are becoming in the waiting. He sees how the challenges you are facing are shaping you into the person He has called you to be. As you wait, your heart is being tested. Are you learning to trust in God's timing? Are you learning to lean on Him instead of your own understanding? Proverbs 3:5 and 6 instructs us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This passage challenges us to stop trying to figure everything out on our own. God knows what's best for us. He knows the desires of our hearts. He knows what we need and when we need it, and He is faithful to provide for us in the perfect timing. The waiting process often involves a change in our hearts, a transformation that only God can accomplish. There may be areas in your life that need healing before you can step through the door He has prepared for you. There may be areas in your life where you need to let go of pride, selfish ambition, or unforgiveness. God works in our hearts, refining us so that when the door opens, we are ready. Avile sperino. It's not just about the opportunity. It's about being the right person for that opportunity. Think about Jesus. Before He began His public ministry, He spent 40 days fasting in the wilderness. This period of waiting, of preparation, was not a waste of time. It was during this time that He was strengthened for the mission that lay ahead. It was during this time that He gained clarity about His purpose. And when the right time came, when the door was opened for Him to begin His ministry, He stepped forward with power and authority. The same way, God is using the seasons of waiting in our lives to prepare us for the doors that are about to open. God is not wasting your waiting. He is working even in the silence. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, He is moving in ways you cannot see. And when the door opens, you will realize that everything you've gone through, every delay, every moment of uncertainty was part of God's perfect plan for your life. God doesn't waste anything. Every season, every trial, every moment of waiting has a purpose. It's also important to remember that God opens doors that lead to growth. The doors He opens will never lead you backward. They will never cause you to shrink back into old patterns of fear, insecurity or sin. The doors he opens lead to places of growth, to places of greater influence, greater responsibility, and greater impact. And as he opens those doors, he equips you with everything you need to walk through them. If God has opened a door for you, he has also given you the strength to walk through it. You may feel unqualified, you may feel afraid, you may wonder if you're ready for what lies on the other side. But know this, if God opens a door, he will give you everything you need to step into your destiny. He will provide the resources, the wisdom, the strength, and the courage to face whatever comes your way. Philippians 4:13 tells us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The moment you step through that door, you are not walking alone. God is walking with you every step of the way. As you wait for God to open the right doors, don't forget to focus on the here and now. Sometimes we get so fixated on what we don't have or what we haven't achieved that we miss the blessings in the present. God is always working in your life right now. He is always doing something in the waiting. Take time to thank him for what he has already done and trust that he is preparing you for what is to come. The waiting is the very substance of the waiting. Your waiting is not in vain. It is part of the process of becoming who God has called you to be. There are lessons that you can only learn in the waiting. There are strengths that you can only develop in the waiting. And there are moments of intimacy with God that you can only experience in the waiting. If you try to rush ahead and open the wrong door, you will miss the beauty of the waiting process. When the right door opens, you will see that it was worth the wait. You will see that all the delays, all the challenges, all the unanswered prayers were part of God's perfect timing. He is never late. He is always right on time. And when he opens that door, you will step through it with the confidence that he has prepared you for this moment. You will know that everything you've been through, everything you've endured, has led you to this point. There may be times when you doubt that the door will ever open. You may wonder if you've missed your chance or if you've made too many mistakes for God to use you. But let me remind you that God's love for you is greater than your mistakes. His plan for your life is not contingent on your perfection, but on his grace. If you are still breathing, if you are still seeking him, then you are still in the process. God has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. The door is coming. And when it opens, you will step into a new season of your life that is full of hope, purpose, and promise. While you wait for that door to open, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep trusting him. Keep believing that he will provide. Keep walking in faith even when you can't see the way forward. And when the door opens, walk through it with confidence, knowing that God has been with you every step of the way. You are not alone in this journey. God is with you, and he will continue to guide you into the fullness of his plan for your life. As you continue to trust him, as you continue to wait on him, the doors that God has for you will be opened at just the right time. The best is yet to come. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Your moment is coming, and when that door opens, you will walk through it into a future that is filled with God's perfect purpose for your life. As we come to the close of this message, I want to remind you that God's timing is perfect. Even in the moments of uncertainty, when you feel as though doors are closed, he is working behind the scenes, preparing you for what is to come. Trust that every season of waiting is not wasted. It is a time of growth, refinement, and preparation. God is shaping you to be the person you need to be for the doors he will open at the right time. When that door opens, you will walk through it not in your own strength, but in the strength God provides. He will equip you, guide you, and empower you for what lies ahead. Do not rush the process, and do not lose heart in the waiting. God is never late, and he is never early. He is always on time. And when he opens that door, you will see that it was worth every moment of waiting. Keep your eyes on him, trust his plan, and know that the best is yet to come. When the right doors open at the right time, you will step into a future that is far beyond your imagination, one filled with purpose, fulfillment, and his unending grace.